This is the reason I'm doing this song today is special request of Eddie Stubbs. And Eddie said to tell you he loves you still and he wished that he could be here.
They call it the Mother Church of Country Music, a site where legends are born, songs become scripture, and reputations last longer than applause. However, beyond the gleaming lights of the Grand Ole Opry, few dare to talk of the darkness. And Jeannie Seely, the Miss Country Soul, has been carrying those shadows for nearly 6 decades. To the general public, Seely is the smiling, rhinestone-studded trailblazer who broke down boundaries when women were expected to sit down and sing beautifully. She won a Grammy, defied dress restrictions, and stood out in an industry that sometimes considered female performers as decorations. But now, at the age of 84, Seely is ripping back the veil, not out of bitterness, but out of truth. She will never forget or forgive these 5 names. These are not nameless murmurs. These are Opry royalty, men and women she once shared a meal with, sung beside, and trusted with her aspirations. What they did or did not do left scars. Some prevented her from seizing a chance. Others left her out of history. This is more than simply a personal feud. It's about what happens when quiet becomes survival and forgiveness becomes an unaffordable luxury. For decades, Jeannie Seely kept her tongue out of respect for the family. But now, in the twilight of her career and the Opry's own reckoning with its past, she is ready to speak. These are the 5 Opry stars whom Jeannie Seely can never forgive. And at the end, you may understand why. Jeannie Seely made her Grand Ole Opry debut in 1966, holding her Grammy-winning single Don't Touch Me and wearing a daring miniskirt that elicited gasps from the audience. She was not only making her Opry debut, she was also changing the dress code and standards. But not everyone applauded. Stonewall Jackson, a long-standing Opry member who had been a fixture on stage since the 1950s, was one of the harshest critics. Jackson, known for his traditionalism, made no secret of his dislike for women who dared to stand out, and Seely was doing it on purpose. What began as passive-aggressive remarks backstage gradually escalated into something colder: exclusion. According to Seely, Jackson used his influence with Opry managers to limit her performances, discreetly moving her down the bill or out of the lineup altogether. In interviews decades later, she never mentioned him by name. But admirers close to the scene understood precisely who she meant when she spoke of a man who couldn't stand seeing a woman rise faster than him. The betrayal hurt because it wasn't just about fashion or stardom. It was about gatekeeping. Jackson represented the old guard, the group of guys who chose who got a microphone and who didn't. Seely got her first glimpse of how powerful egos may close doors. It wasn't loud. There were no debates or public condemnations, just a gradual, steady freezing out, and a young lady understanding that brilliance alone isn't enough. The notoriety she gained came at a cost: loneliness. This was the treachery that showed Jeannie Seely how the game was actually played at the Opry, and it would shape every subsequent action she made. In the close-knit world of the Grand Ole Opry, friendships may feel like lifelines until they aren't. For Jeannie Seely, the most agonizing betrayal did not come from a competitor or a critic. It came from someone she previously considered a sister, Jean Pruitt. Throughout the 1970s, Seely and Pruitt were viewed as 2 powerful female forces carving out space in a male-dominated arena. They toured together, shared dressing rooms, and even campaigned for each other in public. Behind the smiles and harmonies, however, something darker was brewing, and Seely would not find the truth for years. According to a close friend of Seely's, it was at a casual lunch in the mid-1980s that she discovered Pruitt had reportedly barred her from being nominated for Female Vocalist of the Year at the Country Music Association Awards. The source is a former CMA committee member who confessed that Pruitt fought against Seely's inclusion. claiming that she didn't have the right image anymore. The phrase, "the right image," struck a profound chord. Seely has always advocated for individualism. Her former buddy had now used that might against her. The treachery was neither loud nor public. There were no headlines or conflicts, just a creeping awareness that someone she trusted had used her name for political purposes. Seely never addressed the situation directly. She did not need to. Her decision to disassociate herself from Pruitt in subsequent public appearances and interviews spoke loudly. The hurt was too deep for reconciliation and too intimate for forgiveness. Seely saw this as more than just sabotage. It was a lesson. Even Nashville's friendliest grin may conceal the sharpest blade. And when trust is shattered backstage, no encore can make it right. In country music, Bill Anderson is a Hall of Famer, a skilled lyricist, and one of the Grand Ole Opry's longest-serving members. He was known as Whisperin' Bill because of his soft-spoken delivery, and he projected an image of humility and elegance. But for Jeannie Seely, behind that whisper was a gatekeeper, someone who silently barred her path when she needed it the most. Their working partnership started on a bright note. During the 1960s, both were rising stars. Seely even made frequent appearances on Anderson's syndicated television show, demonstrating the connection and charisma that fans admired. But things began to change in the 1990s, when Seely, who was mounting a dramatic rebirth, proposed an idea: a revival Opry program co-hosted by senior members, giving women like herself a key stage once more. According to Seely's close group, Anderson originally indicated interest. However, when the Opry producers started official conversations, her name unexpectedly vanished from the idea. Months later, a similar program aired, but with a younger male co-host. Seely was not approached again. It was not an accident. Rumors circulated that Anderson proposed freshening the image of the Opry's heritage acts, and that Seely, despite her legendary reputation, did not fit the bill. The insult was not solely personal. It delivered a message that even the symbols had expiration dates. Seely still seldom mentions Anderson in interviews, even when asked about her early collaborations. Silence says volumes. Unlike public feuds or headline-making spats, this was a betrayal motivated by missed opportunities and unreturned loyalty. In the realm of country legends, legacy is valuable. And Seely's former stage partner had quietly decided she no longer belonged there. When Jeannie Seely came out in 2005 about the systematic inequity that female singers experience at the Grand Ole Opry, she didn't expect a standing ovation. But she did anticipate support, particularly from one of country music's most prominent voices, Garth Brooks. Brooks had recently returned from semi-retirement and was in a unique position of power. He was more than simply a chart-topping performer. He represented the contemporary Opry's strength, and, according to Seely, he had privately voiced sympathy for her concerns, particularly with the Opry's scheduling procedures, which habitually put female singers earlier in the night while male acts dominated the coveted late slots. Seely subsequently revealed to close friends that Garth had vowed to back her up if she ever brought the problem to light. So she waited before publishing a forceful op-ed in Country Weekly, criticizing the double standard in black and white. But Garth never spoke a word. The quiet sounded louder than any speech. Brooks chose not to comment publicly about the incident. Behind the scenes, Opry management apparently heaved a sigh of relief, as his involvement may have prompted a reckoning. But without his voice, Seely stood alone, and the reaction was rapid. She was branded divisive, and her appearances gradually decreased in subsequent seasons. For Seely, the betrayal was not about disagreement, but about desertion. It stung since Garth agreed with her, but chose quiet. In a company focused on teamwork, his absence was more noticeable than the praise. Sometimes the most terrible betrayals come not from opponents, but from heroes who abandon you when you need them the most. In a backstage interview at the Opry's 2022 anniversary festivities, Jeannie Seely was asked a simple question: "Is there anyone you still hold a grudge against?" She grinned tightly and added, "There's one name I can't pronounce and I never will, because he does not deserve to be remembered fondly." It was a terrifying response. And while Seely never revealed who that last name was, many who followed the politics of the Opry long enough think the solution resides in a man whose shadow once dominated the stage: Porter Wagoner. Wagoner, noted for his colorful outfits and memorable duets with Dolly Parton, served as both a gatekeeper and a kingmaker. In the 1980s, when Seely was attempting to return to recording following personal difficulties, she allegedly presented an album of original songs to Wagoner and asked for his assistance in promoting it through the Opry system. Insiders said he laughed her out of the room. He allegedly rejected her songs as vanity tracks, implying that she had aged out of relevance. Following that, Seely's performances on high-profile Opry evenings plummeted, and the label distribution she had secured inexplicably vanished. The consequence was never mentioned publicly, but the ramifications were obvious. A strong guy pushed a lever, and Seely paid the price. For years, she kept a diplomatic quiet, seeming nice at business gatherings but never discussing the specifics. Her absence at Wagoner's memorial ceremony in 2007 was notable, and it spoke volumes. Seely's statement that she would never say his name again was not for show. It was a border. Some scars, even after decades, never heal, and some betrayals are not worthy of closure. This third name may be the most devastating, not because it was unexpected, but because it confirmed her worst fears about the Opry's inner circle. For decades, Jeannie Seely followed the unspoken rules of Nashville: smile on stage, be mute off it. The Grand Ole Opry was hallowed territory for her, and she respected it even when it did not return the favor. But now, at the age of 84, she is rewriting the finale of her own narrative, not with vengeance, but with the truth. Naming names does not include initiating battles. It's about breaking the quiet. For Seely, these stories have been in the wings for far too long. Stonewall Jackson was publicly shamed. Gene Pruitt muttered sabotage. Bill Anderson made a stealthy erase. Garth Brooks withdrew when it mattered most. Porter Wagoner's brutal dismissal almost wrecked her career. Each betrayal was not simply personal, it was systematic. It also illustrates how deep the rot once went underneath the Opry's sparkling stage. Seely is not destroying relationships by finally speaking up. She's blazing candles for the ladies coming up behind her, who deserve to know the terrain. Her heroism does not change the past, but rather reframes it. It demonstrates that playing nice does not guarantee long-term success in this sector. It comes from standing tall, even if you are alone. The Opry may still honor its stars, but behind the scenes, it's women like Jeannie Seely who keep the institution together. She continued turning up despite every snub, backroom transaction, and broken promise. Not because they welcomed her, but because she refused to be forgotten. She is now disclosing the truth, something she was before too loyal to reveal. Not every name merits forgiveness, and not all legends wear crowns. Sometimes the true royalty is the one who survives the betrayal and lives long enough to tell the world who struck the deepest.